Hello again, everybody. Drew here. Today I thought I would show you a technique I've been using in a lot of beats I've been doing recently for television. A lot of times as a television writer, we are asked to write songs that are in line with current popular music. So I've done a lot of music for love and hip hop. You can hear my beats all over that stuff. So some of the references that were sent to me were modern hip hop producers like Murda Beats, Metro Boomin, Smoke Perp, Lil This, Lil That, you can imagine. And something I noticed in a lot of that music is a sort of dissonance. And so in music theory, two sort of ideas, consonance and dissonance. Dissonance are sounds that clash with each other. And consonants are sounds that, ring harmoniously together. Now, everything has a little bit of dissonance and consonance. That's what makes music interesting. But some of the dissonance in those beats are created from the 808 tones, but also the leads. So what I'm going to show you today is really quickly a way to start incorporating pitch bends on your lead instrument inside of Logic Pro. You can do this in any of the other DAWs. It's just going to be a little bit different on where you locate your pitch bend automation. But all right, let's get started. First, let's go ahead and listen to the beat. Just made a quick little beat here. I'm going to play you the lead that I created, and then I'm going to create one from scratch. Probably be a little bit different than what you hear. But I'll use a lot of the same principles. So anyway, here we go. All right, there we go. Let's turn down our master meter slightly, boost this up a little bit. All right, cool. I hope you like the beat. It's nothing super sophisticated, but again, the goal of this video is to show you how to do one specific lead writing technique. So I wanted to create sort of canvas, if you will, to paint our lead against. Alright, so the instrument I'm working with is a Logic default instrument. It's called the Indian Bansuri Flute. And you're going to find this under World Instruments in the Woodwinds Indian Bansuri Flute. Now, a lot of you may not have this instrument. If you're like me, you see all these little arrows. Those are additional default Logic sounds that I have not downloaded. I went ahead and downloaded the Indian Bansuri Flute so that I could show you this on a default instrument. As I mentioned in former videos, I use a lot of east-west instruments for these kind of organic leads. But again, I want to make this really accessible for those of you that are working on the most minimal setups, just any sort of computer, and Logic Pro, which is one of the cheaper DAWs on the market. All right, so I first created a MIDI window. If you're not familiar with this, you can right click or control click and hit create empty MIDI region, and then made this sequence 4 measures long. Alright, I'm going to zoom in there. Double click on your MIDI window. Alright, now let's perhaps say I didn't already access that. Alright, so this is what most of your MIDI, your piano rolls look like when you expand a MIDI clip. Now what we're going to want to access is additional notes or additional information that pertains to things other than the actual note. Alright, I wrote this beat in A minor, so again, if you haven't seen in my other videos, A minor is the most basic minor key, which is going to be a darker, sadder sort of texture, and it is the most basic because it is all the white keys. Alright. I'm not going to start on just any white key. I'm going to choose the key that we're writing in. So I'm going to write my melody around an A. Alright, so first I'm just going to get some notes in here. All right. Now, I encourage you to use your ear, your imagination. The cool thing about MIDI is we can play the song and move MIDI notes around. So this can be a very fluid process. Let's see. So my phrasing here is basically going to repeat every other measure. My first phrase, I chose the note A. I go up to a C, followed by a B. I basically just go back to do the same thing, but instead of repeating the same thing, I add some extra notes. This G sharp, this is note, as you notice, it's a black key. This is not technically in our A minor scale. We find that note in something called A harmonic minor. A harmonic minor, as mentioned in my theory text, linked at the bottom, is basically a minor key with a raised leading tone, or seventh scale tone, in this case, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, 7. So G sharp, a raised note, would basically turn something that's an A natural minor into A harmonic minor. I could go more in depth into when we find that note, but it's very common. And the source of that note, one of the main things it does is it makes the fifth chord of any minor scale, or in harmonic minor, the fifth chord is major. This gives it more of a dominant sound, and what that basically means is that it performs stronger in the key than essentially a minor 5. All right, cool. So that takes care of this. All right, let's hear this lead before I start doing any pitch bend stuff. This is what we've got. It's got some interest. Hope you like it. Again, not really concerned with giving away my most crazy music writing principles. Just kidding. Just trying to keep this basic. And I'm going to show you how, with even a really simple melody like this, using the pitch bend automation is really going to help us. So in Logic, the first thing you're going to need to do, if you haven't followed my series from the beginning on these YouTube videos, I did something accessing or allowing advanced functions. So what you're going to want to do is go into Logic Preferences, Advanced, and you're going to want to make sure, for this example, that MIDI is checked. But what I like to do is enable all advanced options. As I've said before, part of the reason these aren't automatically, enabled inside of Logic is there's certain problems that can arise from using the advanced functions. Not if you use them correctly, but one of the things that advanced functions allows us to do is reverse audio, invert audio, do a lot of cool automated audio changes. And what this kind of editing falls into what we would call destructive editing. So it actually changes the original audio file. We can get around this, as you've seen me do in other videos. But anyway, no more about that. Just make sure your advanced functions are on. All right, we're going to go in here to view MIDI Draw. We're then going to click on Pitch Bend. All right, now what Pitch Bend does is it's basically going to have the note start with the note that is actually in the MIDI. So it's still going to be an A, but then we're going to be able to change the pitch. So let me just show you one example that's not going to sound very good. We could take the pitch and bend it down. Now, one important thing to think about with regards to pitch bends is this is essentially like using the pitch bend wheel on a keyboard. So we can go from in the middle with no pitch changes all the way to as detuned or much lower as possible. Now, anytime we're working on MIDI, this is controlling a MIDI controlled instrument. It's important to note that the pitch bend will bend as much as the instrument is set up to do. All right, so if you're working in Serum, the bottom left of the instrument, you're going to see a plus number and a negative number. If the default initial preset has it to +2 and -2, what that means is if I'm at -64 in this pitch bend, I'm going to be going down 2 semitones. So for instance, if we wanted that to go down an octave, we would have to set our negative number in Serum to -12. All right, for this default instrument, we don't actually have to do anything. Let's hear this pitch bend. Again, this isn't going to sound good, but this isn't where we're going to finish. You can probably hear that. It bends down. All right, now we are going to use that to our advantage. All right, so we can do a lot of stuff in here. One of the cool things about the pitch bends is that it's very hard to be like rhythmically precise. So because we're drawing, chances are things are going to get a little wonky, and that's actually a good thing. I think if we want the note to change to a specific note at a specific time, we can just use the MIDI. We could actually change the notes. What this is going to do is it's going to bend from the note that we chose to somewhere unspecific. Again, -20. This doesn't actually mean anything. It's a ratio of whatever the instrument's parameters are to bend. So we can come in here and do a lot of, I'm going to just kind of randomly do this. Now one thing, since I chose the notes, if I'm at 0 at some point during those notes, we're going to hear them as we would expect. So it's still going to be in key and then bend out of key. So that can be kind of a good thing to have. Now, you can get really crazy with how you're writing in here. If you hold Command, or that weird shape thing on some Apple computers, it gives us our pencil, our drawing ability, so we could really get crazy like that. Now, the pitch is going to move, so if I wanted to add in some sort of vibrato in a human way, this is basically what's going to happen, going up and down around our principal or our main note. And that note is going to vibrato. All right, cool. So another thing that's happening here is my actual phrase, as I mentioned, is we're repeating everything every 2 measures, but I didn't repeat the exact MIDI draw. I kind of did a similar thing where like on the first note I go down and then up, but by a different amounts, and you can see all the extra dots on the right here. Cool. So let's go ahead and take a listen to this. Hopefully it sounds good. We'll see. Go in here and mess around with it. So hopefully you heard the actual pitch bending there. What this is almost doing is it's creating like a sort of a phrase within the bend. It's almost like changing the notes. But we didn't actually change the notes, and the advantage of doing it this way is, again, we're gonna end up with something that's slightly more dissonant. Anytime we move to a specific pitch, but not quite to the pitch, and we're bending around it, those are some of the more dissonant notes in existence. In fact, with a tuned piano, it's said that the minor second or 2 adjacent notes are some of the most dissonant group of notes on the piano, that and a tritone. But basically, using the pitch bend is a great way of creating leads that are pretty current sounding. Again, I think if my ears are not lying to me, that we're hearing this on a lot of the contemporary SoundCloud hip-hop tracks. With a simple chord progression and a decent drum groove, using pitch bend on a lead instrument can really help you to discover some new notes and sort of create even more interest in a melodic line. If I were to say duplicate this and not use the pitch bend as drastically, let's go over here and change it. We can do things like add vibrato and add just a really subtle human touch. If I reset this and then I perhaps do a little bit of a dip at the end, and the second time I do the vibrato. I correct that. You almost don't notice the pitch bend, but it is there, and it is, again, adding interest. Anything we do to the MIDI, whether that is changing velocities, right now all of these are basically as hard as possible velocities, but changing the velocity, changing where the notes are, adding pitch bend, automation, or any of the other automation we'll cover in the future, all of this goes a long way to adding interest to our MIDI. You probably all have heard a piece of music you've written inside of Logic that's using a default instrument that you think perhaps sounds stale or doesn't sound as exciting as some of the music you like listening to. And a lot of excitement that happens in music are from nuances, from subtle things happening. It really makes our acoustic environment, when somebody is singing somewhere or playing music, nothing is perfect. The computer is one of the closest things to perfect I think there is. If you use your calculator, chances are it's not going to make a mistake. If our computer's working properly, it's going to play A, C, B, G sharp, A. It's going to play it at the perfect time. Since we're not used to hearing things that are perfect, that's going to be something that tells our ear that it's not real, and ultimately, I think music that has some real nature touches us more, and people like to listen to it. So anyway, I hope this was helpful. Feel free to ask me any questions via email. I hope these tutorial videos are helping you out. I'd love to hear some of your music as you progress. And again, just keep at it, keep writing music, and try to incorporate pitch bends to your MIDI draws. All right, till next time, signing off.